Welcome into the Hoopwise Podcast. We are part of the brand new New England Basketball Journal. My name's Ethan Fuller. I'm joined by Steve Hewitt. This is a really exciting time. We are launching New England Basketball Journal, part of Seamans Media. We're going to be covering high school, prep school, AAU, all the local undercovered basketball scene in New England. And I'm super excited. Steve, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm doing good, man. Really excited. I feel like I've been sort of keeping a secret for the last couple months and can finally kind of share with the world what we're doing, and it's gonna be great. I feel like obviously the New England's rich with talent, great programs, a lot of players have gone on to play in the NBA, college basketball, high level Division I basketball. There's a lot to cover in this area, and we're really excited to share some of the great stories and highlight some of the great players in the area. And you can already see it in our first magazine. You go on our website. We've got watch lists going and some feature stories. We're gonna try to cover as much as we can. Obviously, there's a lot to cover in New England, but we're going to do our best to cover as much as we can and do it at a high level.
Yeah, there really is so much. That's been in the years that I've covered basketball locally, and you're learning this now, is just mastering the schedule for us is really hard. We've kind of I think we've gotten a good system down over the last month or two of just keeping track of what events are where, because it's confusing. It's hard to keep track of just because there's so much going on. And really, like, I don't think, unless you're in the basketball space, the youth basketball space, like, you don't realize this is a year-round sport at this point. Like, we have been in the weeds with AAU since the start of March. And like, when we jumped in immediately, it was what's going on in the AAU scene. That's what we've been working on over the last couple months. And then once that happens, maybe there's a brief pause sometime in August and September, and then we're getting ready for the fall season and then the school season. And it's like, it doesn't stop, which is great for us. We're going to have a year. We're never going to be short of stories.
Yeah.
That is going to be really great.
Yeah. And our goal, we're going to try to do daily content. We're going to try to find stories. We're going to try to profile as many kids as we can. And we'll have guests on the podcast eventually. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And you mentioned it earlier, like, this is really such a good time to get into the local basketball space. Even going back to like Terrence Clark a couple of years ago, when he came up through Brewster and from Boston, and Cooper Flagg, who we're not going to discuss too much today, although we may talk about something you've been working on.
Maybe.
But he obviously has kind of changed the entire spotlight towards New England and specifically Maine. Now we got AJ Devonsa coming up. We're going to get into this episode will be about the boys basketball class of 2025 and some of the top players that everyone should kind of know about, especially if you're just diving into this space. We'll get into that, but it really is just, there is so much good local basketball here.
And I've been saying this, I don't think there might not be a better time to sort of launch basketball than now, because when's the last time? I don't think we were trying to figure out the last time. It probably has never happened when the number one recruit in the country back-to-back years is from New England, when you got Cooper Flagg from 2024, AJ Devonsa coming up for 2025. I don't think that's ever happened before.
I cannot think of a time. And like, we're younger people, but I think we kind of did our research, and it's at least been a really, really long time.
Like, what are some names that come to mind? Like Patrick Ewing,
Nerlens Noel, I think. Yeah. But again, these are, like you mentioned, they're kind of blips on the radar for a long time.
Yeah.
And especially for it to be different states within New England, I think is really cool.
Obviously, Cooper from Maine and AJ's from Brockton, Mass. So, but we're not going to just obviously cover that. I mean, they're the headliners, but there's, as we'll get into in this episode, there's so much talent.
Knapsack is loaded as always, and just kind of generally, since we're introducing what we're doing at New England Basketball Journal, we'll be covering preps a lot. We'll be covering Publix a lot. We'll, as we've talked about, been covering the AAU scene a lot. If you are a great player or a player with a great story, we are going to find you at some point, and we're going to write about you, and it's going to be super exciting.
And if you think we're missing you, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I think we're pretty open to story ideas. Which is fun.
I've been telling as many coaches as I can. The line's always open. You can easily find us on social media. We're going to have a heavy presence on Twitter and Instagram. If you have a story, let us know. We want to tell it.
Yeah. So yeah, again, this is the class of 2025 boys basketball top players to watch. We're going to dive into those a little bit more, but just before we get there, we want to introduce ourselves a little bit and kind of explain how we got to this table, what got us interested in kind of jumping aboard New England Basketball Journal, and just what has us excited about the local basketball scene here. We're both born and raised in New England. We both went to New England colleges and participated in student basketball media. And I think we're both pretty proud of that. Yeah.
I think my program might have been a little bit better than yours, but
wow. I mean, my program went to March Madness while I was there. Although yours did.
Mine did too.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
The last time.
Yeah.
So I went to UMass, class of 2014. Ethan, you're BU.
Yep.
But that tournament didn't even happen.
Yeah.
So can we?
Wow.
I don't know if we can really count that. Right?
Don't. I can't. The fact that the men's program, the BU men, the time that they go, of course, I can remember that day. I can remember watching. I did not travel for that because BU went to Colgate and COVID was already starting to happen. And it was our spring break. So I kind of took a backseat and was going to watch. And I called the coaches after and wrote stories off of that. But I think while I was watching the game, I remember getting like the Rudy Gobert tests positive for COVID. And then all the celebrities start jumping out, and then the games get shut down for the NBA, and I'm just sitting here watching BU upset Colgate, and I'm like, oh,
let's go.
What is about to happen?
BU's going to tournament.
Yeah, what is about to happen? And I remember talking to Joe Jones on the phone after, and I was like, do you know, like, what do you think is going to happen next? He was like, we're not talking about it, which I understand. But so that happening, and then the women's team was also really good my years that I was at BU. Went to the Patriot League Championship and lost at home. Also had another run to the Patriot League semis. I think they would have won the league, but they got called at the semifinals because of COVID, so we didn't get to see what happened there.
Every program saying, "Oh, we would have won." Right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So yeah, a little bit of a curse while I was a student. So sorry, but I do want to kind of set you up to explain how you got here. I personally am very interested in your UMass time because you've shown me the work that you've done as an editor there and how much pride you took in layout and how much pride you took in kind of arranging all the stories, which I think is really cool. So yeah, let me clear out and let you cook.
Let me cook, man. But yeah, like we said, we're both from New England. I'm from Taunton, not too far down the road from Providence. So I did go to UMass, but I kind of grew up as like a Friar. I was a big Providence fan growing up.
Are you a fan of Friar Dom? Okay.
I don't know.
I feel like that's everyone's reaction.
Yeah, he is what he is.
Yeah.
So grew up right down the road from Providence. Went to the Dunk all the time growing up. That's kind of how I fell in love with basketball, honestly. Watching. So this is like maybe late '90s, early 2000s when they were really good. I remember going to games. Ryan Gomes was playing, obviously former Celtic as well. So I grew up at the Dunk. Went to a ton of Providence games. They broke my heart in 2004 when they were the 5 seed and lost in the first round to Pacific. I was like, are you kidding me? But love of basketball was born. Went to some camps growing up and ended up going to, like we talked about, went to UMass. And so I didn't know I was going to really get into journalism until I got to UMass.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got involved with the student newspaper there, Daily Collegian. Shout out Collegian. And pretty much right away they put me on the basketball beat when I was a freshman. And it was funny. Like my years was sort of like UMass was like developing into this tournament team, and I kind of got to see that unfold over my 4 years. So if you remember, Chaz Williams was the leader of the program back then. Coach Derek Kellogg. That's where I really got my chops covering basketball. And senior year, they finally made the tournament first time in, what was it, 16 years?
I was gonna say, so that was the like post Calipari revival.
Yeah,
era. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, which was cool because Derek Kellogg was the coach and he played under Calipari, so it was sort of a full circle kind of moment for the program. And So I had so much fun covering that team, and they ended up getting smoked in the first round by Tennessee. I think there was a little bit of we're just happy to be here.
Yeah. No, I understand that. It's
Yeah.
a mid-major student.
Yeah. So covered them, and so my journalism journey, I interned at a few places in Boston when I was in college, and made some connections when I was at UMass. And pretty much right out of college, I got hired by the Boston Herald, and 10 years later, a ton of experiences, and I got to cover the Celtics the last 2 seasons, right before I moved on to here. Covered a lot of college basketball at the Herald. I was an AP Top 25 voter. That was cool. So the last 7 years, I've been a Top 25 voter.
That's cool. Do people trash talk you for that?
A little bit. Not too much. I feel like, not to call out other voters, but I feel like I do a pretty good job comparatively.
Okay. No, that's good.
So I don't get as much crap from fan bases as maybe some other voters who are. I don't know how everyone does the poll their own way. So I'm not gonna call them out or anything, but there was this one time when the San Diego State fan base kind of came after me. It was like my first or second year voting.
So random.
I just remember getting back from a run, and I had like 1 million Twitter notifications. I'm like, oh, this is odd. I don't really usually get a ton of Twitter notifications, and it was like just a gauntlet of like San Diego State fans calling me out for. I think I ranked them 6th that week, and they were really like 3rd in the poll, so I like had them lower than what their consensus ranking was.
6th. That's still.
I was like, yeah,
right.
You guys are still top
Okay.
10. No offense, you're San Diego State. Like, you should just be happy to even be ranked.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I've always wondered what it's like to be kind of localized, but then like all of a sudden you have this national attention on you. That's odd.
Yeah. So did college basketball, covered a little bit of everything at the Herald. Patriots, Red Sox, covered the World Series in 18, Super Bowl 19, which is ultimately was the last Super Bowl of the Tom Brady, Belichick era, obviously. Went on to cover the Red Sox, then the Celtics the last 2 seasons, which was an incredible experience, and then had this amazing opportunity to move on to New England Basketball Journal and lead the launch of this thing. So I'm definitely new to this space, as you know. You've kind of been helping me along and sort of learning the nuances to the high school AAU scene. There's a lot to learn. It's really complicated, but I'm super excited to get going. Like, obviously we have been getting going, and just the stories. Like, I always tell people, like covering pros was really fun. Obviously you're going to the biggest games, but there's nothing like high school basketball in those communities. They just take so much pride, and the family just takes so much pride in their kids, and the communities really rally around those teams and schools and programs. So that's been cool for me to kind of sort of ingrain myself into that community already, and sort of I've gotten a really warm welcome from everybody. So that's been cool for me, and I think that'll help the coverage and help us write some really compelling stories. So.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really cool perspective, and that's something that I really started to appreciate as I've covered local basketball is there's a lot at stake for a lot of kids and families and people around these local high school programs and AAU programs. And as like we both know and everyone knows, there's a ton at stake in the pros. Obviously, people are making millions of dollars. It's billion-dollar industries. But I think when you zoom in on how hard some of these kids are still working to make their dreams happen, whether that's playing in the pros one day or playing Division I college or getting a scholarship or even just getting to a great Division II or III school and having that opportunity to get a good education and then keep playing basketball at a high level. Like, these kids work really hard, and that might not lead to NBA or WNBA superstardom, but like there are a lot of people locally who appreciate that, and I think that has been really, really cool for me to kind of learn about. And I don't, not to put you on the spot, but you mentioned as you've been kind of learning the space, what about just the way all of local basketball works, what surprises you the most? Or what did you like have to get used to grappling with as a media member. I definitely, like, I have some that I have answers for myself that I was kind of like, man, this is so odd. But is there anything that jumped out to you?
You mean just in the high school?
Yeah, just as you've kind of worked on stories and stuff.
Just learning the knapsack.
Yep.
And we're gonna dive heavy into the knapsack. Obviously, they're one of the top leagues in the country for prep school basketball. It was a little overwhelming at first, learning all the classes and what that means.
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like you don't realize how many teams there are until like we've looked at lists. And
no, I didn't realize. I didn't
much larger.
Definitely did not realize how many schools. It's just, we've talked about it. There's so many schools. It's a little overwhelming, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to cover as much as we can, but ultimately there's going to be some things we miss because there's just too much
it's a lot going on.
Undercover. So,
yeah.
But
that's probably a good one for me.
Yeah.
Like, I have become such a different type of social media user through basketball, because you're keeping track of, the offer graphics, and you're keeping track of commitments, and you're keeping track of where teams are playing, and like players posting their own schedules for AAU events and stuff. And there's so much, the amount of my bookmarks on Twitter or X, I guess, is filled. Like, usually I'd keep it for like funny stuff or inside jokes, but now it's like 90% just like, oh, I need to remember where the schedule is. And so I'm spending so much time in my bookmarks now. But yeah, it's a really fun, exciting world. I think us being younger people, I feel like we're a good fit for getting this. Like, we don't have to do as much.
I'm not as young as you, but
yeah, I feel like I'm getting older too.
I'm feeling older just talking to some of these kids. So I did you'll see in the magazine and the website, I did a story with Jay Jones, and he's talking about like growing up and watching like the LeBron Kyrie Cavs in 2016, and he was like 10 years old.
Oh no!
And I was like at the Herald, I was like a fully functioning adult at that time. And I'm like, oh man, this job's gonna make me feel a little old.
Yeah. If you're a kid or a young player watching this, it is obviously very nice and kind of flattering to be called Mr. Fuller or Mr. Hewitt. You do not need to do it, because it also makes us feel old. So
yeah,
I would lean like, please don't. Although we're not going to be offended, but
yeah, you can just call us Ethan and Steve. It's fine.
It's low key.
Yeah, we're pretty chill.
Yeah,
we like to think we're young at heart, right? So
I hope so. All right, you want to?
Well, maybe we can get a little bit about you and your background.
Okay.
We know you went to BU, but what's your basketball background, and where did you come from?
Yeah, so I about half of my, I guess, childhood life, I grew up in Rochester, Massachusetts, a rural town. Honestly, like when I talk to people in Massachusetts, I still kind of have to explain where it is. It's kind of by New Bedford, Wareham-ish area. So I grew up there for a while, and then my family moved to Newcastle, New Hampshire, home of Duncan Robinson. His dad was my 6th grade teacher, Mr. R, shout out. Then went to high school in Portsmouth, New Hampshire after that, and then went to BU. And so basketball, I think I probably got into basketball the way a lot of kids did, but still kind of odd, is I was a big 2K player with my dad and my brothers and my friends. And so we, like, a couple of my friends, we would run, the My League franchise mode. We would run those. I feel like I'm outing myself saying this. Like, we would have slumber parties where we would only run My League from like 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. That was literally all that we would do. We would start like with our teams. We'd make expansion teams in 2K. We'll call it 2016, and then run it till 2026 when the computer generated Bronny character is like a superstar. And so that got me really into not only the NBA, but like a lot of the undercovered players within the NBA, because you're trying to find, like, you find players you like in the video game and stuff, but then you see them in real life and you're like, oh, they like have really interesting stories, or I feel like they're underappreciated. And so that in a weird way got me into the NBA and into wanting to learn more about people who are undercovered in that way. And so then went to BU, played a lot of 2K there, but also was in student media. Very proud WTBU former co-director, basketball writer for men and women. And as I mentioned earlier, fun, also cursed time to be a BU reporter, but it was awesome and everyone was super nice. And I kind of loved that it was undercover in some ways because the teams were very open to my coverage. And also you got such great journalism experience because a lot of times like it was one-on-one or like one on two. And it was mostly student media. It was like us in the Daily Free Press. And so
you got to grow up fast.
Yes. And I was also, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this in public, but I was roommates and co-director with Patrick Donnelly at New England Hockey Journal. So shout out that connection.
Shout out Pat.
Yeah. But then I started at the Boston Globe as a sophomore, basically on the score desk, just taking high school scores and slowly turned that into being the beat writer. I was beat writer for cross country, running, girls basketball, and boys volleyball, season over season. And I loved all three of those. Basketball, obviously I had a little bit more of a natural affinity for, and that's why I'm here, but cross country was really fun. Boys volleyball, I knew nothing about that sport before I got put on it, and volleyball is such an awesome sport, and so covering those teams is really cool. And cross country, slowly, we've talked about this off air, but I'm trying to be a runner, and cross country has helped me with that. You've helped me kind of get the bug a little bit. But I've also covered the marathon twice for the Globe. I think some of my favorite stories that I've written, specifically in the basketball space, are stories about the communities here. My last story I wrote at the Globe was about Terrence Clark and how his passing and his mentorship for a lot of the kids locally and even just outside into greater Boston helped a lot of kids like AJ Devansa and some of the other kids we're going to mention really like find a love for basketball and a love for being great and a love for giving back to their own city. And so
for the viewers, just remind everyone who Terrence Clark was.
Yes, right. So Terrence Clark, if you didn't know him, he came up, he's from Roslindale, one of the best high school talents New England has ever seen. And what was kind of interesting about him was he was a social media sensation in the way that a lot of the mixtape legends that we know are. And so he was going viral on YouTube in 8th and 9th grade, and suddenly at all this spotlight, he was on the cover of Slam magazine. Everyone kind of knew who he was. He was at the top of all these prospect rankings. And then he gets to Kentucky, had a pretty good year at Kentucky, was going to be drafted, and then very tragically passed away in a car accident as he was preparing for the NBA draft. And obviously that was really devastating for anyone who knew him because he was such a bright, charismatic, really like genuinely caring personality about particularly the local people here. Really great outreach to kids, as a lot of the kids who would then talk to me would say. So he, I think, more than almost anyone else, has kind of paved the way for what is happening now in New England, especially on the boys' side with the talent and with the commitment that is coming out. And so that is one story I'm really proud of. And just like a lot of the communities that I got to meet through covering girls basketball specifically were really cool. One of my favorite stories that I wrote was about Mashpee. They had a team that was about 75% girls with Native heritage, and they play a lot of their games at the Wampanoag Tribal Community Center in Mashpee. And so I went to one of their games just to kind of see what it was like, and it was just really cool. The turnout for this team that was pretty good, but Mashpee it's not a city. It's not like a perennial powerhouse of a program, but so many people came out just to see this girls team play. They're 2 of their 3 1,000-point scorers ever were on that team and had both of Native heritage, and they took so much pride in just kind of being a beacon in that way for that whole community. And so that is where you see, and one thing that I learned a lot is that like these kids, they might be kids and there might not be social media sensations, but you really can have an impact on your community even as a high school kid. If you're like a talented player and you use your platform the right way, like you can really make an impact, whether it's Terrence Clark showing that or these girls showing that. And so that was something really cool. But yeah, so I was at the Globe for 4.5 years, and now I'm here. I'm really excited. This is, I'm all in on this space. Obviously, in the past, I worked at the Globe and I worked at Basketball News covering the NBA too. I've been out to Las Vegas Summer League once and wrote some cool feature stories with that publication. But now to be all in on this is really cool, and so I'm really excited. Yeah.
I just look behind me, saw the logo. It got me a little
yeah,
excited.
it's cool. Excited. Like we got our own logo now. It's fun. So, are we ready to?
Yeah, I think talking about Terrence Clark is a good segue into sort of the top basketball, top boys players in New England. I guess we can. So for the launch, we both, boys and girls, put together some watch lists for class of 2025, which is obviously the rising seniors, and 2026 rising juniors. We each picked about 10 on each side.
10 plus some honorable mentions.
Just a little bit honorable mention. And so we want to get into maybe some boys' names for everyone to watch for the coming season. A lot of talent.
I think that was one thing we literally wrote in each of ours is this class for both boys and girls is so good. And we are even going to, the honorable mentions cuts that we had to make were hard. There are going to be a lot of really good names that we will not mention here, and we apologize in advance. It's not even slander. Like, there are so many good names in this class, and I'm really excited. So if this works for you, I'll kind of tee you up on, because you've been doing more of the research. I know some of these, good amount of these names on background, but you've been kind of diving into them.
And we can start on AJ. Like, he's AJ DeBanza, clearly he's consensus number one high school recruit in the country for 2025, from Brockton. I think most people have him number one, and it's like Cam Boozer,
him and Cam Boozer,
Carlos Boozer's son at number two. I mean, take your pick, I guess.
Yeah,
they're like two very talented players who are generating a lot of interest. And rankings are what they are. Like, they might, like,
they're so imperfect.
They're so imperfect. They're rankings. Like, we don't. These kids are 17 years old. We don't know what they're going to end up being.
I mean, we're emphasizing this is a watch list and not a rankings. We are not ranking these players on purpose, because it's just like, it's not really worth all the effort and the blowback that comes from it. Because
I just put AJ at one because he's probably the most recognizable name right now in New England, and it was just an easy one to kind of start with. And he's had an interesting year already. Obviously playing with the Oakland Soldiers AU team, but he made news recently because so AJ started his career, high school career, we'll say, at St. Sebastian's locally, transferred to Prolific Prep for his junior season last year, had a great year, and then made somewhat surprising news not too long ago, earlier this spring, I would say, right? It was in June?
Yeah, like May, June, depends what you define as
exact time. That he's transferring to Utah Prep for his final high school season, which caught us by surprise. I remember you sent me the tweet, or maybe I sent the tweet to you when Utah Prep announced that. I was like, oh wow,
I
was not expecting that.
Yeah, because I totally honest did not hear about Utah Prep at all, but they're obviously on the rise, and they are investing a lot of money into their campus and program and expansion and stuff. And so this clearly is working because AJ and his family trust that. But
so AJ will be a name even though he doesn't play in New England, has obviously New England roots, played from Brockton. We will be following his senior year. He's got a big college decision to make. He's made official visits at this point to USC, BYU, and Auburn. Right, those three. And there's definitely going to be some more this fall as the season starts. He's been offered by pretty much every powerhouse college you can think of. The Duke, Kentucky's, UConn's, right?
Blue Bloods. Name a place, and there's a pretty good chance.
Yeah, they wouldn't be doing their jobs if they're not offering the number one team recruit in the country. So it would be interesting to follow his decision and see where it's widely expected he's going to be one and done and go to the NBA and be a lottery pick for 2026. But it'll be interesting to see, obviously, where he ends up. And for the launch, we also did a profile on AJ, and Ethan wrote the profile. And one thing that stuck out to me, like, obviously he's playing out west the last 2 years, but he's never kind of forgotten his roots. We had a chance to last month. He came back while the Celtics were playing in the NBA Finals. He was back at his old middle school. Excuse me. Trinity Catholic Academy in Brockton, made a little appearance, and we went down to meet him and watch that. He's a Nike athlete, so he gave away some Nike swag to all the kids there, which was really cool to kind of see him come back to his roots. He was with his family, and that was what Ethan's story was about, was sort of his family roots and how much pride he takes in that, and how that'll never change for him, even as he sort of dives into superstardom here. When he projected to be in the NBA in a couple of years, he's never going to forget kind of where he came from.
Yeah, I thought it was, as I was kind of working on that story, I thought it was really fascinating that this is a young person who is obviously uniquely talented and gifted, but their family is not a basketball family by any stretch. I mean, his mom is from Jamaica and an immigrant to the United States. His dad is from the Congo and then spent time living in France and then moved to the United States to play soccer. But neither of them were like a basketball family. So you're jumping into this space where he is suddenly like being bombarded with money and deals and like people wanting decisions out of him and all this stuff. And so this family has done a pretty admirable job of keeping their circle tight, which is something that I've learned from families of like important, really talented recruits, is like, you really got to keep your circle tight and know who you're dealing with. So they've done a really good job with that. It's AJ, his mom, Chelsea, his dad, Ace Dubonsa, and then he has two sisters who he's really close with. And just to learn a little bit about how they have held those bonds together, even as he is in California and now Utah, and he's far away and he's not home a lot. And so even like the fact that he came home for Trinity Catholic Academy and like he was there for I think 10 days, but immediately he has an obligation to go on the radio, and then he's going to Trinity Catholic, and so he has like all these commitments, even though he's just probably 17. At some level just wants to be home and hang out with his family.
Yeah, that too.
So that was an interesting dynamic to explore, and they were very gracious, kind of unpacking that with me. And it's going to be really cool. You kind of got to this, but the bottom line with Dubonsa is like, if you are following the local basketball scene here, it's him and Cooper Flagg are like, you just got to follow those guys. It doesn't matter if they're playing in New England or not. Like, they obviously care about this region. They want to see it thrive in the way that it is, and they're going to be off, and they're going to likely be stars at whatever level they get to. And so you just you got to track them. And so it's really exciting to see both of those two, but Dubonsa, since we're talking about him, be as successful as he is.
And I wrote about Cooper Flagg for the launch as well. Sort of along those lines, has never really forgotten. He's from Maine, probably the biggest. We won't get into Cooper too much here. We're obviously focused on 2025, but that was a cool story to write about how he's changed basketball in Maine, and how he's also kind of embraced his status as kind of Maine's big hope. So check those stories out. Really good stories on basketballjournal.com. Those are big features for the launch.
Yeah, so. I was so psyched that we both pulled those off. Like, I don't know, like, not to flex too much, but for us to not, as we're reporting on these stories, to not even have a website for people to see us as proof, but to still be able to trust us to tell those stories, I was excited about.
Yeah,
and so
that was an important thing for the launch to sort of cover the two most prominent recruits of these 2 years, 24 and 25.
Yep.
And I think not to toot our own horn, but I think we knocked that out of the park.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah. Moving on from Dubonsa, we have Dwayne Aristode, who also is not from New England, but he is very noteworthy because he plays for Brewster and worth discussing just because of how good he is. So, what have you seen about him?
Yeah, as you said, from the Netherlands, kind of came over last summer, I think. This past season was his first season at Brewster, and he's just, you just look at him and he's got all the physical tools. It's like a 6'7" wing, can really defend, can score all three levels, and he actually missed some time, I think about a month and a half, with an injury in his season with Brewster, and so that kind of ate away at some of his development, but he is consensus like top 25 national ranking, and he'll definitely be someone to kind of keep an eye out for this upcoming season. Brewster's got a lot of talent coming back. Yeah,
no surprise. That's great. And
yeah, and I guess we'll just go down the list. So this one was really interesting for me. Is Oswin Ersham? I'm gonna botch his name. Sorry in advance. It's a very even his coaches were like, everyone messes it up. Don't worry. But Oswin Ershamwa, I think that's how you say it.
Okay.
Putnam Science, BABC, 6'10" center from Nigeria. We actually profiled him for the magazine as well. We did a little scouting report. I talked to his coach at BABC, Isaiah Davis. Gave me some great stuff about his development and
the player comps. So who were the player comps? I thought this was so sick.
Was it Pascal Siakam?
Yep.
And Robert Williams, which was like,
those are very different players.
Very different players. But you can see it with Rob, I guess, so Oswin's strength is easily his defense. He's a shot blocking just machine.
Go watch the highlights. Oh my god,
it's insane. Like, look up on Twitter. I sent it to Ethan when I saw it. I think it's happened a few times in the spring circuit with BABC where he is just, instead of blocking the shot at the rim, he just goes up and catches the ball.
It's crazy.
Like
it's like a two-hand catch.
Yeah, I've never really seen that before.
Wild.
So he's a Providence commit. So as someone from that area, I know Providence fans are gonna absolutely love this kid.
Yeah.
Isaiah Davis, his coach at BABC, was telling me just how great of a person he is. Just high character. What's interesting about him is he comes from Nigeria. He just moved here 3 summers ago, and his development has just been insane in that time. Like he had like almost little to no basketball experience before he moved over to the United States. But he's just kind of picked up everything super fast, and his talent is otherworldly on the defensive end, and he's getting there on the offensive end. He's a little raw, but he's got an insane jumping ability. He's got some good footwork. There's stuff to work with there. Good foul shooter. So Providence fans are gonna love him. I know that fan base. That Isaiah was even talking to me about how whenever they post something on Twitter about Oswin, all the Providence fans are always replying.
Fryer.
Thank you. It's like a bit with Providence Twitter where all the fans just reply with the same phrase, and it's hilarious to me. Man, it's just like they're one of a kind for sure. But Oswin will be interesting to watch because there is a strong possibility he might reclass to 2024 and go to the Friars for this upcoming fall season. No announcement has been made. No final decision has been made yet, but he's had a really strong spring circuit with BABC. And it feels like there's really nothing for him to prove on the high school level.
Yeah. Especially he's already made the commitment too.
Right. So that'll be something to watch for sure. Yeah. So
he's exciting. And then we'll move to the reigning Massachusetts Gatorade Player of the Year. Go ahead.
So Jalen Harrell is it's absolutely one of the names to watch in New England. Probably might be the best just pure scorer.
Wow.
In the area. 6'4". He's from Needham, plays for Cats Academy in Cambridge, and I just want to make sure I get everything right. Expressions Elite. I'm still learning. I can't remember everything at the top of my head.
It's a lot of AU teams you got to keep track of. Yeah.
Gatorade Player of the Year. He averaged about 24 points a game last season, and he's going to gain even more notoriety as the season progresses. I think he's on some national rankings right now, but Cats, as I wrote about in the launch, has a lot of talent coming back as well.
Team.
They're going to be an exciting team to watch, and he's sort of the head of the snake there. So I feel like as they play and they experience success this year, it's only going to Jalen will only gain some notoriety there that he already has.
Also a Boston kid, also from Dorchester.
Also,
so,
yep,
yeah.
correct. And he has a college decision coming. We'll see when that happens.
It got postponed
a few times,
which is fine. Like, that's okay. And any kid, like,
he's getting a ton of interest.
Take your time.
Yeah,
do what's right for you.
Literally no rush. We were kind of just talking about how all these kids are making. It's kind of different from other sports where if you're a hockey player, you're committing when you're younger.
Yep.
And the basketball, it's pretty common for these kids to be like we just talked about. DeBance is probably going to do a few more visits this fall and make a decision in the winter sometime. So there's no rushes with these kids. So
and then next up we got Badara Diakite. Is that right?
So we don't have to dive too deep into all these, but I do want to make a note of the South Kent kids, Badara Diakite and Kelvin Odie. South Kent had sort of a rough year this past year by their standards. They won the knapsack title in 23. Kind of had a down year last year, but these two kids are the real deal. But Badara is 6'9" power forward. Kind of plays, even though he's big, like 6'9" big.
Yep.
He sort of plays like a sort of a wing.
Okay.
He's just very fluid. He just has that kind of look. Talking to Rafael Chelios, the coach at South Kent, about him. He just said just the raw sort of his fluidity, and he can kind of do everything. The big thing that they really want him to find something he's kind of elite at this year, because he can do everything really well, but when he gets to the next level, they want to hone in on one or two things that are that he can really hang his hat on.
Yeah.
And then Kelvin Odie, one of the buy your stock now, Kelvin Odie.
This is the Rhode Island elite player.
Yeah.
You've sent me clips of him, and he is so fun to watch. And I'm gonna quote what you say in your breakdown. Again, you can read all of this too online. We'll have an article about this, but you wrote that the South Kent coach said he could have 0 plays drawn up for him in a game and still finish with 15 points purely on hustle.
Yeah,
that is pretty special.
Yeah. So just to be transparent, I haven't seen these kids in person yet. Obviously we're getting started here, and they're playing all over the place for AU. But I saw the clips. Like he's right in saying that. I mean, he's just relentless. He's a motor. Chelios is saying he's one of the best offensive rebounding guards he's ever been around. Coach.
I love that.
So if you get to some South Kent games, I'm going to try to get to some South Kent games this year. I just want to see this kid at work, because he seems like he's really fun to watch. I love those kind of energy players, like a kind of Peyton Pritchard types.
That's all I think about.
I was thinking
now
Peyton
when I think
Pritchard.
Of offensive rebounding guard.
I don't understand. I covered the Celtics for 2 seasons. I don't understand how Pritchard just finds. It's all instincts.
It's amazing because he's not. I mean,
obviously,
with all due respect, he's not an explosive athlete by any standard.
Of course not, and he'd probably be the first to tell you that.
Yeah.
But he just finds those little creases to get rebounds, and it's amazing, especially on the NBA level. So Odie's a big name to watch.
Yeah.
Chelios thinks that he's gonna be a big stock riser this year on national rankings, and both him and Diakite were invited to the top 100 camp in Vegas last month in June.
Nice.
And played really well there too. So they're gaining notice, they're gaining attention, and South Kent, I put them as one of my teams to watch this season too. They're primed for a big bounce back here, and OD and Diakite are a big reason.
Yeah. So you mentioned South Kent had two guys on your watch list. New Hampton also had 2 guys.
Yep.
And those are 2 more that when you've sent me highlights and when I've just kind of watched them, I'm really excited about both of them. So Keyshawn Tillery and Mason Blackwood.
Yeah. So those another kind of 1-2 punch for New Hampton. They kind of exceeded expectations this past season. Made the NEPSAC final, lost to Vermont Academy, and Tillery and Blackwood have kind of been the fixtures of their program the last like 3 years since they got in, and sort of saw it, like they've kind of led that turnaround. So Tillery's a 6'1" point guard. Blackwood's a 6'6" guard. They're both from New York. Obviously, they call New Hampshire home for their high school seasons, and Tillery's probably be a three-time captain. He kind of stepped in as a sophomore and immediately, like, Andrew Gale, the coach, I think he was actually voted team captain, but Gale was just talking about his leadership, and it was apparent right away. And he's the engine of their offense. He's an electric guard. He's continuing to sort of develop an outside game. I think that's probably the next step for him. But a really good point guard. Blackwood, big time scorer. Gale was saying he's probably one of the most efficient scorers in the NEPSAC. So high level instincts, strong defender. He always seems like he's sort of like one step ahead with his cutting or offensive rebounding, and he seems like he just has a nose for the ball and a mind for the game, and sort of advanced compared to his peers. So New Hampton is definitely the favorite, if not one of the favorites, to maybe win the AAA NEPSAC Class AAA. Sorry, and those two are a big reason why. So,
and then we got two guys left.
Okay,
we can just go through them quickly.
Yeah. So the last two guys on the 10 are London Jemison, 6'9" forward from St. Thomas More, plays for Expressions Elite. Preston Fowler plays in Brewster's national team. 6'7" forward from Connecticut. And yeah, this was a really hard list to sort of cut down to 10, because it's, especially for 2025. I feel bad. Ryder Frost is like had an insane spring for Middlesex Magic. Their best player, plays at Phillips Exeter, was the Class AA or Class A Player of the Year this past season, getting a ton of looks from high major teams, and he just couldn't crack the list. But he's going to be a name to watch. And my five other names to watch were Abuka Corey from Brewster, Nazir Meyer from New Hampton, Jake Blackburn from Worcester Academy, and Dylan Valette from St. George's. All those guys were sort of all NEPSAC, all league last year. But and yeah, like, my apologies if someone sees this and finds issue, like, it's just hard.
Yeah,
there's too much talent. So
there's so much talent. Even like we've talked, I guess this is technically 26, but we've talked off air about Amir Jenkins and the year he's had for BABC, and there's so many guys, and I think it's cool that there are so many different programs that are developing this talent too. Like, I think a lot of people know Brewster because they are much more prominent on the national scene, and they obviously have this track record of amazing, like, NBA bound alumni and everything. But like, you look at some of these teams and it's like, there are so many different ways. I'm jealous of you in the winter. Well, I'll have great games too, but I'm excited for you in the winter because you're going to have so many great games to go to.
Yeah.
Just because there are so many teams out there.
Especially in the top class. And that goes with the territory of being the top class. Like, those are the best players are going to come from there. Yeah. But I feel like every night I go to a AAA game, there's going to be a high-level D1 player to watch, which will be really fun to get to know these kids and see them develop over the course of the year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think that kind of wraps for this first episode. And again, this is just the start. Like, we kind of went rapid fire through a lot of the players, but I imagine over the course of the late summer and fall and into the winter, like, we're going to probably unpack some of these guys a little bit more. And this is, I don't know. Just going through these names gets me fired up to watch some of these people play because we've already said it 1,000 times. There's so much talent in this region. So yeah, this is a good way to start, and I think a fun way to get people fired up.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That wraps first episode of the Hoopwise podcast. Again, we're part of the New England Basketball Journal. Fresh, new launch. Get excited. Follow us on social media platforms. Go to our site, read our stuff. We've got a ton of content out there already. Again, this has been in the works for months, and we've been setting up so that when you go to our site, like, just dive in and have fun. There's so much to explore now.
So much content on the site, basketballjournal.com. And
how about the social handles, John?
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, and you can find us on Twitter, or
you can find us on Twitter.
We want to call it X or whatever it's called now. I'm at Steve_Hewitt.
I'm at ETHman43, so it's Ethan with an M in the middle.
Okay.
And yeah, so
you're gonna change that?
No, it's
might be confusing to say on the podcast over and over, but
yeah.
And we'll have an Instagram page as well for Basketball Journal, and you can find us everywhere.
Yeah. So once again, this has been the inaugural episode of the Hoopwise Podcast. We are a part of New England Basketball Journal and Seamans Media. Steve, great job. First podcast for you.
Thank you.
And I think I kind of made it through there okay. And great. That was really exciting.
Yeah, it was fun.
We will see you out there. Find us on a court. Find us online. Find us on social media. Thank you and take care.